And hello, everyone, and welcome back to Cyrus Webb Presents here on Amazon Live. I'm your host, Cyrus Webb. Glad you all could join us once again. If it's your first time with us here on Amazon, welcome. Make sure you guys do hit that follow button so you can stay connected with all of our programming here on Amazon. You'll see it either here in this corner or down below. You will also see the book by our next guest. We're so excited to welcome Reagan E.J. Jackson to our broadcast today. She's the author of this book of essays that is powerful, poignant, but also I think not only retrospective of her own life, but also the journey of so many. It's called Still True. We're going to talk to Reagan not only about the writing of the book, but also what it's been like for her to reflect on her own journey and the way that people are connecting with it as well. If you guys are just now finding out about Reagan, we'll let you guys know how to stay connected with her. We also are simulcasting our broadcast today. So if you guys are joining us on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter, we welcome you guys as well. If you guys have any questions for Reagan, make sure you guys do put those in the chat. We'll be glad to be able to make sure we bring those up too. But Reagan, thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
So Reagan, this is exciting to be able to speak with you. When I was first found out about your book, and we're going to talk about the journey of writing it here in a bit, I was excited because I think so many times in life, as we're kind of in the middle of stuff, we don't realize what we've done and who we've become. So I think that's a great place for us to start. As you kind of look at Still True yourself, what has it been like for you to kind of reflect on your own journey?
Yeah, I mean, definitely this book is a time capsule, right?
Mhm.
Like it's a collection of essays and articles written over the span of 10 years. Kind of at the beginning, I felt like I wasn't even sure if I really wanted to do this journalism thing. And then by the
Mm.
end of it, I feel like pretty confident in my voice, pretty confident in what I've been able to accomplish. I'd won several awards at that time as well, and so for me, like I, even though it's essays and articles, it also feels a bit to me like a memoir of this
Yeah.
experience. Mhm.
Mhm. I'm so glad that you said that because I actually got a chance to read the book prior to
Great.
this conversation, and I felt that. In fact, in the section that you have in the book, calling out and calling in white media, you talk about your own frustrations. I want to read a bit of that,
Mm,
Reagan, because when I read this, I thought, wow, she is really letting us into her journey and her feelings. You said this in the book. For those who have the paperback edition here on Amazon, it's on pages 86 and 87. But you write, not only did I feel marginalized as a journalist, as my story got shunted aside in favor of the inaccurate, mediocre, whitewashed retelling, but then I got to watch white media marginalize black art and a black artist again. What is the point of mainstream media providing coverage of non white issues if they aren't going to take the time to get it right? And then you say this, Reagan, I decided to give voice to my frustration. First, I posted the link to my article on all of my social media and asked my friends to read it and share it. Anytime anyone posted an article on the subject that missed the mark, I put the link to my piece in the comments to supplement the anemic narrative. Then I took it a step further. I went through every article written by a Seattle news outlet and began to send the writers my unsolicited critiques via the comment section of their articles. And I love this because you kind of talk about the frustration that a lot of people feel in journalism and outside, but also the need to make sure that your voice, as you say later in this piece, is heard. Talk to us about that courage because that takes a lot of courage for one thing to do that. But what but what was it like for you to kind of reflect on that, your ability to not only to feel, but also to respond in a way that makes sure your voice is heard?
That's funny. It's lovely that it comes across as courage. In my mind, I'm like, ooh, she was petty that day.
Oh,
Petty
okay.
LaBelle. But honestly, like, I was just really sick of it.
Mhm.
It really bothered me, especially because I broke that story. Like, that
Yeah.
was, that was mine. And I broke it in a really, like, I still really stand by the piece that I wrote. I think as one of the most in-depth, um, really nuanced reflections of that particular incident. And it
Mhm.
really did bother me. I just was so like infuriated that people would just would just not take the time to get it right.
Yeah.
So for me, like, this is one of the reasons why I was an unexpected journalist and why I didn't necessarily see myself in the field is because I saw all this mediocre work and thought, well, if that's what it is, I know I'm not doing that. Uh,
Right.
and so for me, this was taking it a step further and really claiming for myself, like, no, like, what I've written, what my experience of this is actually better than what I've seen. And I want to put it out there and I believe in it. And maybe that's not fair.
Mhm.
I think about that as well, because I definitely, like, have having been a journalist, I've had the experience of people trolling me in my work,
Sure.
and so I don't wanna do that or be that for other people, but I also felt like my critique was pretty valid, and the difference between me and trolls are that often trolls are just they're just out there trying to get at you. They don't actually come with any information or insight or a willingness to kind of engage fully with what's happening.
Yeah, so such a great point, Reagan. So let's back up for those who are just discovering. I want to be able to whet their appetite with that piece because as you were talking, I thought about that. That's what made me go to that. But when did you first realize that you had a voice you wanted to share? Because I think for a lot of people, that's a connection they always also will see in your story and in your book. Still true is that when you realize that you know what that you have a way of being able to capture things in words that you wanted to be able to share with others. When did you realize that?
I think I've always felt that way. Even as a kid, I always felt like that. I just didn't necessarily think that anybody would want to listen.
Hmm.
And I think that maybe for me has been a pivotal shift as well as uh, kind of I talk about meeting Alex Stonehill, who later became my editor. He was one of the co-founders of the Seattle Globalist. And I met him and the other two co-founders at brunch and pitched unintentionally pitched an article to him about study abroad. And when I followed up with the actual article and he published it and there were minimal edits, I was like, "Oh, he really was interested in what I had to say." It wasn't just something like, "Oh yeah, yeah, I wanna hear what you have to say." It was like, "No, I wanna hear what you have to say and amplify it. This is really good."
Mhm.
And from there, I feel like I got a lot of encouragement around what I was writing because a lot of what I was writing were just things that weren't getting written about at all,
Mhm.
or were being written about so poorly that people were really craving a counter narrative.
Love that. And it seems like for me, when I was reading the book and kind of thinking about this conversation with you, Reagan, that you not only wanted to make sure that you were able to tell stories that you wanted to make sure got out there, but you also wanted to share the stories of others to make sure that those got out there too. So what was that like for you? Because part of what Reagan does in the book for those who haven't gotten it yet, and again, I see you guys already clicking through on the Amazon side. You guys can get the paperback or the Kindle edition. We have both editions there for you guys. What I love, Reagan, is that you're able to give voice to others. What was that like for you to use a platform that way? In fact, one of the interviews that you did, they even said to you, a lot of times people make it about me and it's really about it's bigger than me. So what was that like for you to kind of be able to share stories like that?
Honestly, it was very intuitive. Before I got into journalism, I worked as a community organizer. So a big part of my work and an educator as well. I'm still an educator,
Mhm.
but a big part of my work has always been connecting people, connecting with people, hearing their stories, amplifying their stories, thinking about, okay, I'm hearing this story from one community member, but this community is the ones that need to hear from it or benefit from it. So as I stepped into journalism, it was a natural intuitive thing. And also to my previous point, I did not like the ways in which journalists were covering my community. I live in South Seattle. It's predominantly people of color. There's incredible things that are happening here every day, but let Seattle news media tell it, and it's a awful, terrible place to live. And
Mhm.
there's just nothing but gun violence and crime and all that. I'm like, but there's also art and beauty. I'm not saying there isn't gun violence or that there isn't crime. I think those things are everywhere.
Yeah.
Um, but again, it comes back down to who's telling the story and why, and who has access to tell stories. So for me, as soon as I realized that I had the mic, people were listening, they were with me. I was like, well, come on, y'all. Like, this isn't just about me. This is about us.
Yeah, I love that. And you know what? I'm so glad you said that, Reagan. I live in Mississippi, as you probably were told. I
Mhm.
feel the same way about our state. A lot of times we hear about just the negative things; those are things that grabs the headlines. But there's so much beauty here, and that's part of the connection. That's why I said in my introduction, it's so funny how this conversation is coming full
Yeah.
circle because the arts are vibrant here. There is so much togetherness here, but you would not know that if you turned on television, and that is not the story that people think of. So for yourself, then, is part of this journey still true? Because I tell you as well, let me say this as a reader, and you tell me what your thoughts were. When I was reading this, I thought to myself, I think a lot of times we have a perception of things and people, right? And a lot of times when we're able to peel back the layers, we realize we have a lot more connection with people and things than we think. I think when I was reading Still True, what I took about was you were the person who you were, as you even said in this conversation. This has always been who you are, but
Mhm.
you've been able to this work that you do in the book to really be able to show that journey and to show that truth. Is that part of what you wanted people to know, that regardless of how they may perceive an area, perceive people, that the truth does kind of show itself?
Yeah, absolutely. I love my title because I feel like it works on so many different levels.
Hmm.
For me, like kind of internally, as I'm looking at this kind of this time capsule of my work
Hmm.
for throughout a decade. When I'm reading back, even to some of the pieces I wrote earlier in my career, it resonates. It's still true. We're still dealing with gentrification. We're still dealing with racism, Black Lives Matter, like the things that are the things that I've written about. The words are still resonant and still true. But also still true is what's going on with our communities. Like we still need representation. We still need voices, and that's part of what I wanted to get across in this book,
Hmm.
and hopefully to inspire communities to resist untrue narratives, to resist the flattening of our stories into something that feels palatable for white media.
Hmm. And that leads me to another point then, Reagan, because well, let me say, because I'm seeing people still coming in on the Amazon side. Let me reset real quick, Reagan, if you don't mind. For those
Mhm.
who are just coming in, welcome. You all are watching Cyrus Webb Presents. If you all are coming in late, don't worry. The replay of this will be available here on Amazon and other platforms. We're joined today by Reagan E.J. Jackson. We're talking about her book of essays, Still True, that is out now here on Amazon. As I was saying earlier, you can get either the paperback, as I have here, or you can be able to get the Kindle edition of the book as well here. We've been talking to Reagan not only about the release of the book, but also the sharing of her journey and her story as well. And also, we want to welcome those tuning in on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter. I was just going to say, Reagan, that's why I think this book is important, because if you had not made the decision to share, we would not know. And I
Mhm.
think that's why I always tell everyone, we all have heard that saying, everyone has a story, everyone's story deserves to be told. Your book to me is another reason why that is so important. So I want to ask you the other side of this. You're used to covering stories. What is it like for you now being on this side? What is it like for you to be the one that's the story?
In this case, it's wonderful. It's been really great. The book just came out last week, so I'm
Hmm.
just at the beginning of this journey of even having these conversations and connecting with people. But I'm really enjoying it. But what I will say is I'm no stranger to being the story.
Yeah.
And that there's definitely been other times where I've been on the other side of it, either because of my activism or things that I was doing in the community. And what always comes up for me is I always like to be in my own words.
Mm.
I want to speak for myself. Um, and so yeah, like this is a great opportunity to do that.
In the latter part of the book, Reagan, you're able to share some conversations with others and to amplify their stories. And I love the fact in the way you've been able to do it, you're really, in many ways, giving them their flowers, right? Of either their work or who they are. So, talk to us about that for yourself. What has it been like for you to kind of look at yourself and give yourself that same privilege, and give yourself your own flowers, and say, look at this story and say, well done, that by staying true to yourself, what you've been able to do with a book like this.
It's a really beautiful experience. We had the Seattle launch party last Tuesday, and it was at Elliott Bay Books, and I was thinking about it, and it was such an incredible experience to be so well received in community, to look around, to see it was standing room only, that we had to go get some more chairs, and to
Mm,
see so many familiar faces, so many people who I've known over the course of my lifetime in Seattle, from all different parts of my life, showing up to bear witness to this moment, to this book launch. It's felt uh, like the culmination of a dream that I've had since I was a kid, to be a real author.
yeah.
And I feel like so many people in the community are the ones who contributed to helping me move into this space. And part of it was through reading my work. Some of it was through participating as people that I was interviewing,
Mm,
giving me things to write about and talk about. So definitely, while it is kind of a memoir, it's the memoir of a community.
yeah.
It's the story of us, not just the story of me.
Love
And I'm proud and excited to share the story of us with other folks outside of Seattle.
it. Yeah, I think that's great, and I think it gives people permission as well, Reagan, to be able to not only to know the importance of their own story, but also realize there are stories that they can be able to tell as well, and that those stories matter. And I think that's the other beautiful thing as well. Again, everyone, Reagan E.J. Jackson has been our guest. I told you, Reagan, it goes by fast, but I want to ask you, uh, for people who are just discovering the book, if they're just not finding out about it, what do you hope they take away from Still True?
Oh, okay. A couple of things. One, I want this book to be a book club book. So like take it and share it with your friends. And part of the reason why I did that is kind of harkening back to what I said about community and this being our stories, is I want people in other communities to share their stories
Mhm.
and to talk and to just connect. I want this to be a book where people like get into an argument about it. Like get salty about like or not. Like have a connected, grounded conversation
Yeah.
about these things, because all of the topics that I'm bringing up, things like where do you live and why, and what are the factors to that, or what do you believe in? What would you protest for? What would you protest against? Like these are things that I think I'd love for people in community to be having these conversations.
Love that. Love that. Well, I think for most people, getting into arguments is not going to be a problem. So we can just add your books in the mix there.
Well, let it bring
Hey,
you
look,
back together.
look. Fortunately or unfortunately, we're all living in a time where it's very easy for us to get into an argument over, over things. But I love that you said that, because I think that is interesting too. Because just like in life, right? People are going to look at things different ways. And like the section that I read of the book, I it was so funny that to hear you say, that, you know, you would look at that and think, you were being petty. I that wasn't even something that came in my mind. I thought, wow, that's courageous and that's bold. You know, it's, so. But I mean, so I think those conversations are so important. So we definitely invite you guys here on Amazon to get your copy of Still True by Reagan E.J. Jackson. Again, you can see it either on the side here or down below, the paperback and Kindle edition. If you guys are joining us on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter, you guys will see a link that will bring you guys over to Amazon so you can get your own copy of the book here on Amazon as well. Reagan, I really appreciate you stopping by the program today. How can our viewers and listeners stay connected with you?
Thank you. Well, definitely follow me on Instagram at Reagan EJ Jackson. But also, y'all, I'm going on tour. So I might be coming to a city near you. If so, come and see me. Next week, I'll be on the East Coast. I'll be in New York City, DC, Baltimore. You can catch me at Red Emma's, the Human Bookstore, or Bus Boys and Poets, respectively. And then I'll be back here on the West Coast for a couple of more tour dates. So yeah, you can follow my tour on Instagram. I'm also going to just be posting some content about what this journey has been like. So if you want to know kind of, if you're an aspiring writer, especially like, and want to know some of the things that are happening behind the scenes, I'm happy to share that with you.
Love that. Well, Reagan, congratulations to you. I'll make sure that I get my review written here on Amazon.
Thank you.
Encourage anyone who's already read the book to make sure you do the same thing. As you heard Reagan said, it's okay. Get your copy, argue with someone about it, and make sure you share your thoughts about it as well. And Reagan, looking forward to our next conversation together.
Thank you.
You're more than welcome. And we thank you, our viewers and listeners, for tuning into this episode of Cyrus Webb Presents. Until next time, I'm Cyrus Webb saying thank you so much for being with us. We will talk to you all soon. Take care.